Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Charles Raether, and today we're going to talk a little bit about one of my favorite visas and what's better than getting one of your favorite visas. It's extending it. It's renewing it, right? I mean, it's like having Christmas every day. So what we're talking about are E-2 visas. Why do we love them? Because our clients love them. They love us. As a result, everybody's happy, right? But on a more serious note, E-2s are just great because they're relatively fast. They don't require that large of an investment amount. Very good statistics in terms of denials, meaning almost no denials. Depends on your nationality and some other factors. You should check out our other videos about this. But like what I wanted to talk about today is, what do we do? You got the visa is one thing. How do we keep that visa and how do we renew it for you? The good news is renewals for the E-2 are probably even easier than the actual applications. So that's the great news. There can be exceptions, again, depending on the condition of your company, depending on your country as well, where you're from, those can play factors. Again, if you're from Western Europe, Canada, Japan, Australia, for the most part, it's quite perfunctory process to get your visa renewed. Pretty straightforward, not a whole lot required. What do you need to prove? Well, you just have to show that the business is still actively operating. You need to prove that you're making some money. How much money? Good question. Really kind of depends on a number of factors about the business, how large it is. But generally we say at a minimum, you got to show you're getting net profit of at least $30,000, $40,000, net earnings of $30,000 to $40,000. If you're paying yourself a salary in addition to that, smaller amount of net earnings than that. If you don't pay yourself that amount, any kind of salary, then yes, you want at least 30, 40, probably even more of that. So that's your net earnings. There's really not much of a focus on the number of employees. I've never had an extension for an E-2 where the issues of employees came up. So the main focus that they have is the business operating, is it generating any income, and is that income sufficient not just to let the owner survive and get by with his family, but is it enough income that there's some even left over for the company, for reinvestment, for further growth, and further development. For the most part, that's all that's required. Presuming you go back to the same embassy, or at least the same country where you originally applied, it's really a pretty straightforward process because your company is already registered in that embassy. But if, say, for example, you got your first E-2 in Canada, I don't know, let's say you have dual citizenship and you also have Italian citizenship. And say for your renewal, you go to Italy to get that. Then you're probably going to have to prepare everything from the start, whole new petition from scratch, because they don't have the information from the US Embassy in Canada, nor do they share it really. And the company is not registered at the US Embassy in Italy. So it's kind of a registration process. If you got your visa initially in Canada, your company's registered there, and it just makes it a lot easier to then do any renewals, or if say you wanted to hire some employees, or let's say even when a partner of yours decided to come 50-50 with you in the US company, your company is already registered there at the US Embassy in Canada, and it just makes it that much easier to go forward. Now, is there an exception to this? Is it always that easy as I described it? Well, not always. Like I said, a lot can depend on your country of origin. If you're from a more developing country, somewhat poorer country, then there can be more complications. I wouldn't say they generally arise. I would say for the most part, there are very few complications when you're renewing. Even if you're coming from a small country like, I don't know, Kyrgyzstan, Moldova, some other small, for the most part, they're pretty liberal in terms of awarding the renewal, as long as you can show the company's actively working, making money, ideally hiring some Americans, and business is going well. So hopefully that kind of puts any concerns you might have about renewals at rest. Of course, there could be some certain circumstances. You had some complications with the business in the US, you had to close it down for a while. Of course, those are all special cases. We would deal with those individually. So whether you've got an E-2 already or you're thinking about doing it in the future, feel free to reach out to us directly so that we can assist you in taking the next steps.